Today, we're cracking open one of the most talked about, and let's be honest, one of the most controversial books out there, Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. So, is it a brilliant guide to getting ahead, or is it a seriously dangerous manual for manipulation? Well, let's figure that out.
Let me start with a question for you. Is power a game you're already playing? According to this book, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. In every single interaction you have, at work, with your friends, even in your family, there are these subtle moves for influence. The whole point of the book is that this game is always being played. The only choice you have is whether you want to be a player or a pawn.
People call it the modern version of The Prince, and for good reason. The book treats power like this timeless, amoral art form, and it pulls examples from over 3,000 years of history. We're talking everyone from Sun Tzu and Queen Elizabeth I to legendary con artists and sneaky courtiers. It's all about distilling their moves into a set of rules for the world as it actually is, not how we wish it would be.
And it all comes down to this one number, 48. 48 laws, a collection of really concise and often pretty ruthless rules that just lay out how power works. You can think of each law as a tactic, a principle, really a piece of a much larger hidden puzzle.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll try to understand this unspoken game itself. Then we'll dive into two really big themes, concealment and influence. After that, we're going to tackle the controversy head-on. And finally, we'll ask the big question. Is this a rulebook you should follow, or is it just a tool you need to understand? Let's jump in.
Okay, first up, the unspoken game of power. What exactly are these rules that Robert Greene says we're all playing by, whether we know it or not?
At its heart, Greene's belief is pretty simple. Ignoring power isn't noble, it's actually dangerous. He says the world runs on these hidden currents of influence, and if you refuse to see them, it doesn't mean you're not playing the game. It just means you're probably losing.
And that leads us perfectly into our second theme, concealment and dissection. Because a huge part of this game is all about the power of what you don't see.
For example, let's take a look at law number 3, conceal your intentions. The idea here is that being predictable makes you weak, right? If people know what you want, they can stop you. But if you keep your real goals a secret, well then you control the whole situation. Greene brings up people like Otto von Bismarck, who would loudly talk about peace while he was secretly gearing up for the wars that would end up uniting Germany.
And Greene is brutally honest about the strategy here. Misdirection isn't just about hiding what you're doing. It's about actively leading people down the wrong path. This is a perfect example of that ruthless, pragmatic thinking that makes so many people uncomfortable with this book.
Okay, so we've talked about the hidden stuff. Now let's shift to what happens out in the open. Our third section is all about influence and reputation. Basically, how to master social control.
And this brings us to one of the most public-facing laws, Law 5. Your reputation is everything. You have to guard it with your life. Why? Because it gets to the room before you do. It shapes how people see you. A strong reputation can give you power without you even having to ask for it. But a weak one? That's like an open invitation for people to come after you.
So how do you actually build this reputation? Well, Greene says you have to carefully manage how people see you. You associate yourself with high-quality things and people, so their success rubs off on you. You pick one standout trait, like being decisive or generous, and make that your whole brand. And then, here's where it gets really cutthroat. He even says you should attack your rivals' reputations to make yours look stronger. The key, through it all, is to never, ever look desperate.
Of course, all of this naturally leads us to the giant elephant in the room. Section 4, the power controversy. Is this book a masterpiece of strategy, or is it just a how-to guide for manipulators?
I mean, you couldn't find a book with a more polarized reception. On one side, you've got people who praise it as this brilliant, essential tool for getting by in a tough world. But on the other side, you have critics calling it a cynical, unethical guide that basically promotes paranoia, and some even call it a playbook for sociopaths.
And you can see this split so clearly across different groups. Strategic thinkers in business, politics, the entertainment industry, they often love its raw honesty. But ethicists and moral philosophers, they have some major problems with it. And then you have the general public kind of caught right in the middle, totally fascinated and, at the same time, completely repelled.
So, where does that leave us? In our last section, let's look at a third way to see it. What if this book isn't a rule book at all, but just a tool? And maybe, just maybe, the ethics of it are entirely up to the person holding it.
From this point of view, Greene is just presenting these laws as observations, not as recommendations.
They're not good, they're not evil. They're just descriptions of what has worked for people trying to gain power throughout history. It's kind of like a knife, right? A surgeon uses it to save a life. An attacker can use it to cause harm. The tool itself is neutral. It's all about the user. So maybe the real takeaway isn't to become some kind of master manipulator. Maybe it's just about giving yourself a choice. First, you learn to see the game being played around you. Second, you understand the rules and the tactics people use. And it's only then, once you see it all clearly, that you can make a real, conscious choice about how, or even if, you want to play.
Which leaves us with one final and I think pretty provocative question. Now that you know these rules exist, which is actually more dangerous? Using them or completely ignoring them? Something to think about.
If you want to dive deeper into books like this and discover more ideas that help you grow, think differently, and live with purpose, check out People Like This. You'll find summaries, insights, and tools designed to help you think like the people who shape the world.